very simple, doable way. Very few organizations either can or are willing to maintain a very ongoing commitment. It's not just post something and hope for the magic dollars to flow. It goes back to that very same conversation that we discussed this morning, and that takes some work. So whether it's a dedicated volunteer, a staff member, a consortium, a committee, whomever it might be, it's the feeling that, you know, I do feel like giving my money or giving myself in hours in volunteering if there's a direct flow back to me that's special, that's unique, and that's part of that conversation. It's not just some generic thing out there. The folks who contributed to the Dollar a Week campaign got a special message that went out to the Dollar a Week contributors.
So it was a standardized message.
It was a standardized message, but that was in essence your buy-in to it.
Right.
And it was something a little different or special from just what was appearing on ABC Nightly News.
Right, it wasn't so much the message, but the exclusivity of it.
Right. And people, again, they felt special, like you would in a family. This is an easy way for you to be part of the family.
I like it.
Yeah, and I guess, I'm with UNC-TV, and that's one of our challenges. I'm in the development department with working with online, and the challenge is, okay, how do we get more people to give online? And you just trigger something that would be a good idea, because we have different type of givers, you know, like our major donors, patron circles, and something like that could be an idea. Okay, the people that give, we have the sustainers. That would be a good option, maybe sustainers that they give monthly, and maybe having something online, or like that newsletter, or that once a week or once a month contact, just to make a part of that special group to get something. But
it's not the exact same material they're going to get if they click on the website.
Right, and get it in a newsletter. And that's where our struggle is, because, I mean, we give you about the programs and everything, trying to find that niche of what is special that they could get the information that's not going to be on the newsletter that comes out.
Perhaps that's where the conversation then comes in. If you are getting feedback on your blog about areas of concerns that listeners have, areas of interest, things that are important to your listeners, so that when you're responding to them, they absolutely feel heard.
Yeah, with that. So.
Then that's what this whole social media thing is all about.
What have you found to be successful with the things that you're doing in terms of fundraising online? What's worked and what hasn't, actually? Tell us both ways.
Well, I guess maybe what has worked is that we're trying to get more of a campaign that's online. So we have a follow-up. So we have the mail that goes out, and then we have that follow-up emails that come up that's mimicking what they should have gotten in the mail. Like, you know, look for this envelope. You know, we send out that email to them. And I think that's been something of growth in terms of our online dollars that we've been raising. Each year it increases. And with our renewals, you know, we're following up again with what's in the mail. We're sending out in the email to try to, it makes it easier for people to give.
And then those pleas are also integrated into your television station, and then again on your actual website.
On air, website, on air. We might have a spot that has please renew, and it has that same look and feel as what they should have gotten in the mail and online.
Do you know if the online giving is a direct response to your online, let me see if I can get this right. Is that giving in a direct response to an online campaign, or are people just becoming more savvy with donating online? So they may see an appeal on television or get something in the mail and then say, oh, you know, this is a nice direct mail piece that I got online. When I get into work, I'm just going to follow up on it and just do it online.
Yeah.
So do you know if there's, what the difference might be?
I don't know where we can track it, but I mean, we can check it once we send out the email. Of course, we know if they responded to that. But if in that case, we're not sure if they saw it on air.
Right.
And then went to the website.
I mean, ultimately, you guys have it made because you have the highest standard of integration, because you have a television station and a direct mail campaign that's, you know, printed and snail mailed, and an online campaign and an email campaign. I mean, you really,
you know,
not
trying to get off.
I say I don't have that. I don't have that luxury. I work
Right.
at a small arts nonprofit, and one of the struggles that we face, and one of the reasons I'm looking to leverage social media and getting more people involved with what we're doing, is because one of our challenges is that people see us as a transactional nonprofit. They know that we do good
Right.
arts. What they do is they come in and they pay for their ticket, and ticket sales make up about half the cost of actually putting on a show. We rely very heavily on sponsorship and individual giving. So people think, hey, I gave you $55 for a ticket, I did my part. Whereas a lot of nonprofits, they really recognize the mission that, that's happening every day. So we're really trying to emphasize our education programs and what we're doing in the community that makes us a relevant nonprofit. We also have a beautiful building that people come in, and people don't often see behind the scenes at UNC-TV. They just see
Right.
what's on the screen.
Right.
So people come into our building and say, marble, velvet, what do you guys need money for? So that's what we're trying to figure out, how to use social networking in that way so that people are understanding, yes, you just loved that concert, but did you know that artist then went up to our music lab and got really involved in helping these students learn X, Y, and Z, or lay down a track, or learn about the music industry. But how does that then translate into fundraising? Just being consistent with it.
Are you doing this type of shooting in your music labs?
We are. As a matter of fact, we hired a videographer because I used to work at UNC-TV, in all fairness. We definitely recognize the power of video and getting that message out. So we've hired a professional videographer, and then we take our flip and we go around and say, hey, it's August 20th, check us out. This is what's going on in the music lab today. And we have students basically learning the music industry and how to record and music composition and training and things like that. So we'll throw it up on YouTube and then post it on Twitter and Facebook and say, hey, here's what's going on in the music lab today. But it is a staff of one doing it, so it's not something that we can do regularly with any success. It's just me.
I was even thinking, and I'm not a marketer, but for your website or something that wouldn't require that ongoing piece, a shot of the lobby and a shot of where a lot of work takes place, just as a visual to somebody like me who might happen on your site, having
Right.
just been in your lobby and that's all I see.
Right.
I might not keep up with an ongoing YouTube piece or whatever, but even just that kind of visual, if that's an image that you feel needs addressing to help promote
Some more
the rest of your
behind the
story.
scenes. My office has no marble or velvet in it, I can assure
Exactly.
you.
You could say,
Picture of your office.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Here's my hand-me-down desk that we got from a yard sale. So,
Absolutely.
you could say, we're not just a pretty face, you flip it, and, we get
Yeah,
our hands
show your
dirty
office.
too. So,
yeah, exactly. That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Except Kim has a pretty face. Not just.
But that whole perception piece and how it deals with people's trust, and we're just talking about some of that over lunch, that when you heighten the trust of where people's dollars are going, then obviously that promotes more donors and perhaps larger gifts.
And I think we do a pretty good job of that in our direct mail pieces. We have a set amount of space and several messages that we want to go out. So we do try to integrate all of our what we call lines of business, the music lab, the performance, the education, all of those things. But I don't know, and then here's another question I have. I don't know exactly how to integrate that into social networking. For example, a lot of what I do, and I completely admit that I'm great at communicating and horrible at listening. I don't know how to have interactive posts. When I try, I get a couple, I get a little bit of feedback, but nothing that's really engrossed in what we're saying. So is that the norm? Am I doing it wrong?
I feel like that's our experience too.
Yeah, does it look too self-serving? I've done a variety of different kinds of posts. Today I put up, when I drove in this morning and I got to listen to a lot of NPR. And I heard that Esperanza Spalding, who's a jazz musician, is going to be on All Things Considered this afternoon. Well, she's in our series this year. So I posted up there, hey, check out Esperanza Spalding, going to be on All Things Considered this afternoon, and here's a piece that she's done about this, and I posted a link to something else that she's talked about. So we've gotten, yeah, I like that, love her. How do we translate that? How are these things translating into fundraising? I just don't know how to integrate all of these different approaches to show, because I'm still at the point where I'm trying to convince people that social networking works. I've had a great success showing that it works on some levels, but not with fundraising pretty much at all. One of our successes with marketing has been, we did a contest a couple years ago. We weren't selling one of our shows. If you're familiar with David Sedaris, he's always sold out for us, and he had not sold out. And we were pretty shocked. We had done very little marketing, so we thought, oh, he's just done. So I decided, well, hey, let's do something quirky. Let's do a haiku contest, and we'll put it up on social, our social networking sites, which we had really neglected. We hadn't done much with it. So I put it up there, and I thought we'd get a dozen entries, if that. Before I know it, our local newspaper picked it up, and the next day I came into my office, and we had about 100 entries.
Wow.
So that's how social media can feed primary media, I guess, and it made it overwhelmingly successful. And the awareness for the show was out there, the participation in what we were doing, the kind of quirky aspect kind of helped us with our brand. So I know it works like that, but I'm not sure how it is working with fundraising. Is anybody seeing it?
Well, it's something we're trying to get into. With Jen Jones, it's been wonderful,
Right.
'cause she's out there doing her thing, and she may say, hey, somebody wants to donate, and that's part of, I guess, the Facebook page and stuff. Of course, we have that Donate Now that's out there to try to direct them toward that, and in our case, doing our pledge drives, as Jen Jones and the interns are tweeting and doing whatever, and they're talking about what's on, during that pledge night, and trying to encourage them to go ahead and do a pledge, and have, it's been kind of slow, but having things through that way. But I've also kind of said in other webinars, and they're saying that a lot of organizations are beginning to have more of a department or a group of people that's part of the social, like a social media manager, and that's all they do. Okay, but we don't have the resources, like you were saying, you can get on there, you can do something this morning, then, maybe the next day or something. But it sounds like the key is to have somebody that is engaging with those comments and things are coming back, so they do feel connected to the station. But the problem is the resources for somebody to do that.
Right.
It's
And that's what you
interesting.
need.
We actually did have success somewhat with Celtic Thunder.
Well, yeah, that was the one.
Did Jen tell you the story?
No, I don't know about that.
Celtic Thunder came into our studio, and I didn't know who Celtic Thunder was. Maybe y'all do. But, they look like 13-year-olds to me. Maybe early 20s, I don't know. I guess they sing Celtic music.
But they were a hit, bottom line, right?
But Jen thought, well, I should start tweeting about this. Well, who knew that Celtic, and Facebook, who knew that Celtic Thunder has this rabid followers? And so all of a sudden, and I guess the guys got out and maybe threw some hoops in our back, in the back, of the building. And I think she got a picture of that, and she put it up on Facebook, and man, it just lit up like crazy. And all of a sudden, they're tweeting and retweeting and sending to their friends that, Celtic Thunder is going. We had 3 or 4 people pledge who couldn't even see the program.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't a ton of money. I mean, I think, it was, but the fact that 4 people pledged, I think one was out in Washington State, pledged that didn't even see the program, was amazing.
That is pretty amazing.
Because you were bringing forth something that was important to them.
Right, and it was content that maybe wasn't accessible. I mean, the picture I'm playing back, you can put that in another place, and then I think she took a picture of the manager who hates having her picture taken, and that was up there till the manager made her pull it down. But they were getting content that they had not ever seen before.
I could say that I found that has worked in terms of just getting more fans. Tony Blackman is a hip-hop artist who has come to Jefferson Center, and when she became a friend of ours, when she, I think at that time it was called fanning, when she said, I like Jefferson Center, everybody who was a friend and a fan of hers became a fan of Jefferson Center. So, and Jen actually does one of our social networking sites and helps us, guide us through that process. And overnight, we jumped up fans exponentially. And we could not figure out why. I mean, it just happened overnight, and like for 2 or 3 days, it just kept jumping and jumping and jumping. And it was because, I traced it back. When the day she became a fan, it just kept going up and going up. So if you could get somebody really influential to become a friend of yours, then that helps too. Or to like you, then it helps.
Just for a quick, what is your nonprofit?
What is my nonprofit?
Yes.
Jefferson Center.
Can't type today.
You see the music lab too? That's us too.
So having Jen recommend it for followers.
Exactly. Jen has actually recommended, Jen has a gazillion friends too, so Jen has recommended before, become a fan of the Music Lab or Jefferson Center, and because she has 600 friends, I think 20 of them jumped on board immediately just because Jen said, hey, I like this.
Is part of the work that you do bringing in well-known artists,
Fairly well known. They're not mainstream.
but moderately? So could it be just a part of your way of doing business that you simply ask them up front when you're negotiating with them? It would be a huge help to us. Would you please consider this? Maybe something they never thought about.
Yep, it does help. That's something, we've had some of our Snarky Puppies, another jazz group that has done some work with us, and they've friended us, and that has helped us too. What's interesting about Twitter and Facebook now is that now that you can tag groups or people or whatnot in your posts, then it shows up on your wall that you were mentioned.
Right.
So I actually did Facebook and Twitter for a festival that I was working on. And what's interesting about that, and here's another anecdotal story about the power of social media. One of the bands who was performing in our festival, there were rumors surfacing, it was kind of a blues, well, it's a artist festival. The main band was a blues group. And there were rumors spreading for weeks that Eric Clapton may show up with them. And people were, there was kind of like just a murmur about it in the community. Well, one of the artists who is in one of the other bands posted on his Twitter page that he saw Eric Clapton that morning at the hotel they were staying at, and he was supposed to be joining him on stage. Well, again, our local newspaper picked it up, and before you knew it, everybody all over southwestern Virginia was tweeting and posting that Eric Clapton was going to be at this festival. We had people coming, from 2 hours away to this festival, and we had nothing to do with it. I had to go through and try to follow the tracks, and I had to fan those organizations and say, Eric Clapton is not confirmed, Eric Clapton is not confirmed. But nobody wanted to hear that. They just wanted to hear that he was going to be there. So, I was literally going on cupcake websites and saying, Eric Clapton is not confirmed. And, basically I had to call the reporter and ask them to pull it off the webpage because it was not confirmed. And of course he did not show up. But
that was a good idea to plant that idea.
I know. Well, I did create it up
All
because
for transparency here.
right. It was so advantageous for us to have done that. But ultimately it ended up hurting our credibility because he didn't show up, so people were a little bit upset. But we tried our best, so you can see how it works both ways too. It did sell tickets. But
One of the things that both of you mentioned as far as who's going to manage things popped in my mind. If along the way your volunteers, you find you have people who are very good at this, maybe this is an alternate form of volunteering and to make use of the talent that comes before you. Not everyone's going to want to do the exact same thing, as you well know, and they're a volunteer. And may also be a way, frankly, for you to attract a different genre of volunteers Now, people think, well, I can't do anything on air, or I can't do this or that, whatever their perception is that a volunteer does in your agency. But if you put out the word, this is another area where we can use volunteers, or a volunteer, or whatever kind of selection process you use, so you don't just get so-and-so who says, I'm great at this and don't have any skills. But that could also be a way to utilize talent that's either already in your volunteer pool or might want to come to you to do something that uniquely they can do. I worked with an organization that a good chunk of their work was providing home visits. We had one group of volunteers, even in the climate here in North Carolina, that their total volunteer role was in the midst of bad weather to provide four-wheel drive vehicles for any of the staff who needed to get to the home. That was all they did. And they felt very comfortable with that. That was their thing, and they certainly got called on at least a few times a year. They were included in all the volunteer accolades and touching volunteers, etc. But that's what they did, and that's what they felt comfortable doing. And they were never asked to go sit beside a bed. So that may be, I don't know, but just one idea of how you...
That's a really good point. Our organization started off back in the late 20s as an old high school. So we actually have this huge, ridiculously loyal support of the alumni who graduated, and I think they closed the doors in, I think it was 79, or no, I'm sorry, I think it was 72. They closed the doors, so they had also been using that as a funding source and a source for volunteers, those really fiercely loyal alumni. And alumni like to be ushers at concerts and do things like that, but we have also a difficult time trying to get in younger volunteers and people, you know, the 20-something crowds. That might be a good way to do it too, is have them use their skills that way. But as a marketing person, I'm fierce about managing our message, so I'm also a little bit nervous
Absolutely.
about
That's why I
that.
said you have to be very careful.
That's what
how
I
you
was
do that.
thinking about that policy, you know, having a social media policy in place, you know, so they say, I guess, a screening or, you know, kind of see, okay, what they're going to put in there, put out there,
Absolutely.
you know, related to UNC-TV or any organization.
Sure.
To monitor what they're saying.
So are